Hi, welcome to Sustainable Farming Association's 31st Annual Conference. My name is Claire LeCan, and I'm an at-large member on the SFA Board of Directors. And this session is Farm to Rural Grocery. We'd like to thank the sponsor of this session, Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Marketing and Development Division, which supports farmers and farm food businesses through grants, loans, marketing assistance, and business development resources. We'd also like to remind you that one of our other winter events, the Midwest Soil Health Summit, is coming up on March 9th through 11th. And we'll be featuring Gabe Brown, Sarah Keel, and a panel of Minnesota soil health practitioners. You can learn more on our website at sfa-mn.org. And if you're not already a member, I encourage you to join SFA and support this important work and stay connected to this community. Again, look for the membership link on our website at sfa-mn.org. And now I'd like to introduce the moderator for this session, Jerry Ford.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be with you here. I'm Jerry Ford. I'm the network coordinator for Sustainable Farming Association, and I'm the liaison for SFA to Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships in working on this project of Farm to Rural Grocery, which we've been working on for some time, and it's really entering the home stretch here with some pretty exciting stuff coming up. And I'm going to let Dr. Draeger tell you about that. Dr. Kathy Draeger is an adjunct professor at the university in agronomy and plant genetics, and she's also the statewide regional sustainable director of Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships, and she and her family run a farm out in western Minnesota. So Kathy, take it away.
All right, I'm sharing my screen. How does that look? Jerry, can you see? Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up. So hi, everybody. Gosh, it's been a while since I've been called Dr. Draeger. In Big Stone County where we farm, I think I'm known as Mike's eccentric wife, which is actually quite a term of endearment because people are quite generous with their eccentrics. So first off, a big thank you to Sustainable Farming Association, of which I am a proud member of SFA and have enjoyed our annual meetings and you know, barn dances that we've been able to pull off. So thank you, SFA, and the regional partnerships have been a long-standing partner with the Sustainable Farming Association, and we work on crop-specific supply chain issues, soil health projects, and we're just really happy that we have this farmer-engaged advocacy and education group to partner with. And Jerry mentioned that the Minnesota Department of Agriculture was also supporting this work and wanted to do a big shout out to MDA, who had some faith in us, you know, about 7 years ago when we first said, you know, this group of small town grocery stores is kind of an untapped, you know, food access point that we really don't know a lot about. And what do you say we find out something about this group? And MDA helped support us to do the very first Rural Grocery Survey, which we replicated just before the pandemic. And so, which I'll be sharing some of that data with. So big shout out to MDA for their, and thank you to them for sponsoring both this session and some of our foundational work. Jane Jewett is joining me today instead of Ren Olive. Ren Olive is not able to join us. Ren is our full-time rural grocery person, but Jane is our co-author on the Farm to Grocery Toolkit, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So Jane knows the ins and outs and the details of how things actually work legally in the state. So we're really grateful to have Jane as one of the leading thinkers and authors behind this work and can help answer questions. So you heard Jerry mention that we are the U of M Regional Sustainable Development Partnerships. We serve greater Minnesota. I'm guessing many of you have hopefully encountered us. We have active boards and work groups in each of the 5 regions. We were formed by the Minnesota legislature in 1997, in no small part thanks to MISA, who Jane is a part of our Minnesota Institute for Sustainable Agriculture. So their advocacy all the 25 years ago is what has led to the partnerships being in place today. And really our role is to make sure that the University of Minnesota is engaged with and working with communities, and that we are listening to your innovations, your ideas, your concerns, and then we can help to match those things with university resources, because you have this land grant university as part of the basically the infrastructure and the assets that are available in the state. So our job in each of our 5 regions is to take in your community needs and ideas and see how we can build university community partnerships around that. This is not in my slide presentation, but I'm going to tell everybody who's on here right now, we currently have an open call for ideas. We're batching all the ideas together. There's lots of ideas coming in from all around the state on food systems, sustainable agriculture, clean energy, natural resources, resilient communities. We're batching those all so that our work groups and boards can help allocate resources for the coming year on those projects. It's open until February 14th. It's 3 simple questions to get your idea in the hopper, and you can find the link to submit an idea at rsdp.umn.edu. You see our executive directors up on the screen, and Ann Dibsetter is kindly filling in Southeast Minnesota while we are in the process of hiring a new executive director, because Dr. Oke Ukaga, who has been serving there, was promoted with an extension to an assistant dean. So we have an opening in Southeast, and there is a position open right now. So if you know someone in Southeast Minnesota who would be a good executive director and provide some leadership for the partnerships, we encourage you all to, you can go to extension.umn.edu, and under careers, you'll find a link to that job. Share it widely. We're a good group of folks to work with, a lot of social entrepreneurs. So I'm going to do this pitch at the beginning and this pitch at the end. We have developed this farm to grocery toolkit, and this is really how can we enter a retail market, an intermediated market for your locally grown, produced, processed foods. We have farmers markets and CSAs. We've done some work on how people can work on wholesale. And really this toolkit is what do we need? What do grocers need? What do farmers need in order to have a successful farm to grocery relationship? How do we open that market? How do we get your farm grown produce, meats, shell eggs, or other things into those grocery stores? We're holding a series of 3 workshops. They start on Tuesday, March 31st. And these workshops will include grocers. So we are soliciting grocers. We're calling grocers. We are getting the grocers who've expressed interest, and we have had quite a few grocers express interest in selling more local foods. We're having those grocers trained in on this, and then we're also having farmers trained in on this, and we're hoping that at our online workshops, we'll actually be able to maybe even do some connecting among farmers and grocers. So, and as I'll say, I think later in this presentation, we're actually going to be offering, not only is this workshop free, but for those farmers, and I'm assuming we only have farmers on today's call, Zoom meeting, that we will actually be providing like a $50 stipend, or maybe it was more than that, but we are providing a stipend to farmers to attend this series of 3 workshops. So we're actually supporting you, and because we really want to be able to start seeding this way of opening markets so that we can have another outlet for our farm grown foods. So I will also share this at the end. So here's what I'm going to be talking about in the next few minutes, which is what is the big picture. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rural grocery stores. I'll talk some about the farm to grocery toolkit, and then really I so much prefer having question answer than having a monologue. So the view I have right now, Jerry, I don't see the chat. So if people want to drop a question in the chat, I'll be happy to pause and kind of explain anything. And Jane is doing one of those workshops are going to be under Jane, so she can answer more specific questions as well.
Kathy, we have quite a fair amount of activity going on in the chat right now.
Okay.
And that's not specific questions at this point, except for where do we register for that workshop?
Did I not put the Z link in there? Hold on, let me go back up. Okay, there is a Z link at the top. If someone could get back up there. Come on. z.uofm.edu/farm2 grocery workshop. And there is an advantage. SFA got the first opportunity because we only have scholarships, I think, for like the first 25 farmers who sign up. But we will be able to give you a stipend if you sign up. So please sign up. Again, z.uofm.edu/farm2 grocery workshop. And I think SFA will probably be sharing that among the membership as well.
Yes, we will. We'll be sending out a whole blanket email on that, and it'll be in our newsletter.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry. So why farm to grocery? And, you know, we have a lot of we don't have a lot, but we have direct farm to consumer supply chains. I mean, I raise grass-fed beef. That is how I market all of my beef, is direct farm to consumer. Although I do have access to a USDA, I'm having a couple steers processed at a USDA facility, and that opens the opportunity for me to do other types of sales like farm to grocery. So this is another intermediated market. I only need to sell my product to the grocer. I don't need to find all the customers who will be able to buy the meat that I have processed. And again, I want to say that call out that this is supported by a specialty crop block grant and very close partnership with MISA that supported the creation of the toolkit and with the Sustainable Farming Association. So part of this big picture is kind of our big dream that farm to grocery is one step of building a more robust supply chain and really looking at these small town rural grocery stores as important assets on your landscape. So there are about 250 small town grocery stores that are operating in communities of 2,500 or less. I think I have a map coming up. There's 42 slides, so I don't have them all memorized. But we're really hoping that as we recognize and build more farm to grocery at this rural grocery store level, that maybe we can then use that as sort of, I'm going to call it a food hub. And I don't mean to appropriate that word, but there's an opportunity for that grocery store to serve as a point that when this wholesale truck comes to that small town grocery store twice a week, it has 3 compartments, one for dry goods, one for frozen goods, one for fresh, that as it unloads and heads back to its wholesale warehouse empty, that there would be an opportunity then to backhaul. Let's say you had 15 pallets of apples and the grocery store is like, yeah, we'll take a half a pallet. What do you do with the other 14 and a half? What if there was an opportunity then to build that wholesale relationship without having to add any food miles? You basically can use that grocery store as your point of contact with the wholesale. Now we have tested this. We've gone through the regulations. We have approvals to do this, and we tested it with garlic, and we had some successes, but we also are facing some issues on pricing. So stay tuned as we try to work through this, but we do feel like farm to grocery is a good intermediated market to start developing. And then we also have some ideas that this could fit into how we can connect farmers with a local food infrastructure like a small town store that can in turn help us access larger markets should we go in that direction. So I think I've already kind of talked about this, but why are we doing farm to grocery? We found from our survey with grocers that a lot of customers actually are looking for local foods. We found that currently 56% of all these small town grocery stores are using the Minnesota logo on some of the products that they're selling in the store. So that's more than half of these stores. So that's over 125 if we extrapolate out the data. More than 125 stores around the state that are already promoting Minnesota grown products in their store. It reduces the food miles. Frankly, I will tell you, during the COVID, I had some deep concerns about whether our supply chains would hold, and having these small town stores that do not have the same supply chains as Hy-Vee and Super Target, it was very protective of parts of our population. There were small town stores that experienced no shortages at all because they have slightly different supply chains. So we really build a lot of resilience into our food system when we can make these connections and recognize these small town stores as an asset. I've been saying for years, Department of Defense should be funding our work because I think we provide a lot of public value with keeping supply chains strong and diverse. And of course, for us farmers, having another outlet for our product is a beneficial for our bottom line in many ways. I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I'm going to check my time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our rural grocery report, which was just published. And you can see the whole report at the university's Digital Conservancy. I don't know if anyone's going to look for it. Oh, it's right there. The link, z.uofm.edu/rural grocery report. It's a really lovely, nicely infographic report that talks about what we're seeing at the rural grocery level. We had a phenomenal response rate again on the survey. We had, I think, approaching 60% of the grocery stores in the state. They answered a 20-page paper survey that had over 80 questions. And we got some really good information about this sector and how we can be supportive of rural groceries and what are their concerns and their needs. So you see those dots on that map, those are just the stores that answered our survey, right? Look at how well they're dispersed across farm country. You know, I think there's some real opportunities if we start looking at rural grocery stores as assets in our local food system and regional food systems. I think you can just see, like this is probably about half the stores in the state. So you could double those dots. And that would be the actual population of stores that we have in the state of Minnesota in small towns. And I will say that what makes this sector important is that we found that over 90% of these small town stores are privately owned. That means when you walk in the door and you talk to the owner of that store, he or she, and we're finding increasingly these are owned by women, are able to make a decision immediately about your farm product. Ideally, you're not just walking in doing a cold call with 15 pallets of apples, right? But that is the person who's the decision maker. And I want to tell you that I was in my grocery store, and you might want to put in the chat. If you shop at a small town grocery store somewhere in Minnesota, why don't you put in the name? Because that's also grocery to farm as well as farm to grocery. Because I know I depend on my small town grocer to keep my two 16-year-old boys in Organic Valley milk, which I am very happy to get in Clinton, Minnesota, population 450. So 91% are privately owned, which means that they have an opportunity to just do this with you when you show up. And I was in the store once when a truck pulled up Clinton, Minnesota is right on Highway 75, which runs up and down the western edge of the state. King of Trails, Highway 75. Potato farmer from the far north of the state was driving down Highway 75, selling potatoes at all these small town stores. And I saw with my own eyes, this guy walked in and said, I've got potatoes. You know, we're from, I don't know if it wasn't Ada, but it was north of that. Would you like some? And I saw the grocer say, yeah, how much? You bet, bring them in. We'll take X number of bags, pounds, whatever you got. So I've actually seen that happen. That was a cold call. I wouldn't recommend that. Just saying, that's the kind of opportunity we have when we work with independent businesses who are in the food business. So while more than half of these stores said that their business was thriving, the majority, 88%, are concerned about their store's economic sustainability. We have seen a number of these stores close. We are watching them close, and we get really frantic calls from communities, from municipalities even, about their store closing and what can they do and how can they resolve this, or what's going to be the options. And we're seeing some success in the reopenings. We had a flush of closures about 2-3 years ago. And now we're having some more reopening in those very same towns. Halstead, Minnesota, Evansville, Minnesota, Fairfax, Aurora. A lot of these places are, after having their grocery store closed for a number of months, we're seeing new ownership come in and grocery stores open. So, you know, I think that's probably a positive thing. So the grocery stores, I got some information up here about, you know, their revenue. This data is kind of out of date because really COVID, we saw these stores sales increase in the first months of COVID, like by 50%. And what I'm hearing anecdotally from store owners is that sales remain about 10% higher than they were pre-COVID. And I don't know that I need to say it to this group, but I just super encourage any of you who live in Greater Minnesota or travel to Greater Minnesota to, you know, use your shopping dollars and help support these Main Street anchors. And if you don't see exactly what you want on the shelf, like my example of my boys drinking organic Valley milk, just ask. And my grocer was more than happy to supply organic Valley milk for basically just our family in a town of 450 people. So these grocers are also integral to the community. I mean, I think as farmers, those of us who are farmers, you recognize that, you know, just like having farmers on the landscape, it's good to have these independent businesses on the landscape as well. The majority of them just own and operate one store. And, you know, like I said, a third of them are female, but we found with the younger grocers, it's about 50-50 male-female ownership. So in addition to selling, you know, picture your rural grocery store, it's selling to people like me. These stores are actually serving in a way as a food hub already. We asked the grocers, who else do you sell to in your community? They sell to hospitals, food shelf, restaurants, other local businesses, schools, and nursing homes. And I know that in Big Stone County, our county food shelf actually rotates purchases through the 3 grocery stores in our county. So they actually stock the food shelf, working in hand with the grocery store, which provides a community benefit as well, right? Because you keep the food on the food shelf for those who are in need, but even the rest of us need to have food access as well. So I feel like there's some really positive models out there for food shelf sales. And these are good employers in our small towns for the most part, that employ high school students, adults. But we're here to talk about local foods and grocery stores and how farmers can access these markets. Jerry, were there any questions for me? I'm just going to pause and see if there's anything I should be taking a breath and.
Not specifically. We're getting a very nice list of grocery stores now, though. Good call on that.
Excellent. So, I told you that more than half the stores are already displaying the MDA Minnesota grown label. So we know that they've got Minnesota grown food in them. Where are they getting that from? So we had 49% who are getting it both from their farmer and their distributor, which would be their wholesaler. So we are seeing some of those Minnesota wholesale, Minnesota produce coming through wholesale. I think I've seen like radishes, for example, and, you know, squash and other things that come through the grocery store that have that label on them. So only 13% of the grocers said they didn't purchase Minnesota grown for their store. And then we asked them, what products are you the most confident at? Isn't this interesting? Honey. Honey is the number one thing that the grocers express some confidence in buying, all the way down to local nuts, which was at the far end. And I know I have actually purchased our hazelnuts, you know, the Midwest hazelnuts in the grocery store. So, but you can see the range of level of comfort with state regulations. But the fact that even with the one they are most confident in honey, it's somewhere between like around 60% that are confident in purchasing honey directly from a farmer to sell. So we really find that having grocers know it's okay to buy honey, apples, you know, other things directly from the farmer, because when we started this work about 6-7 years ago, grocers were like, yeah, you know, we need to buy off the truck. Like the regulations say, we got to buy all our apples off the truck from New Zealand. But that simply isn't the case. And that's why we're glad to have Jane teaching those grocers what the regulations are. In our survey, 41% of rural grocers would like to access more local food. So this is a, you know, kind of a demand pull for your product into the grocery stores. And then we asked if they thought that their customers would be able to pay more for locally grown and produced food items. And you can see that only about 11% said that we could increase the price on those. And then about 54% said maybe. I think we've got some more work that we could do here and really finding out, like if you've got your little cellophane garlic from China and then you've got some Minnesota grown premium garlic, you know, like what decisions are consumers actually making? I think there's still a little bit of question mark, and I think that's evident by the grocers who say maybe. So some other questions that as farmers we might be interested in is that, have you turned away any farmers selling locally grown or processed because you were uncertain about the regulations? A third, 29%, said yes. They've turned away a farmer who wanted to sell locally grown processed food because they were unsure of the regulation. And 22% said they had not yet been approached by farmers. So, but 45% have been approached and purchased food from farmers. So I think that tells us that there is like a little bit more work to do. We can help make the third of grocers who have turned away farmers more comfortable that this is legal, and their customers may even very much appreciate being able to buy something local and fresh. And this is a quote from one of the grocers. This is actually a quote that they wrote into the survey, that I would like to be able to sell locally raised food, and we have access to such, but regulations make that difficult for us to do. And I think Jane, I'll let Jane chime in, but I don't know that it's probably the understanding of the regulations that is the issue, not actually the regulations themselves.
Sure, I can chime in for a minute. I see there was also a question in the chat about whether we understand why purchasing meat was low confidence for grocers. So yeah, you know, the meat question, there are a lot of regulations that are attached to that. There are inspection requirements, and there's not, even though the Minnesota Equal To program has been in existence since 1991, there's still a lot of lack of knowledge about it. So grocers tend to think that they can only buy USDA inspected meat. But if the animals are raised, processed, and sold within Minnesota, Minnesota Equal To inspected meat is just fine. The Equal To means equal to USDA for sales within state borders. So I think, you know, grocers may be unsure because either they don't realize that there are USDA plants that are accessible to individual farmers to get those animals processed and cut up under inspection, which is exactly the same as the any meat coming in off a truck. And they also don't realize that there is that Minnesota Equal To program. And, you know, if they've turned away a farmer, I don't know what the percentage breakdown on type of products it was that got turned away, but if it was meat, it may have been a case where it was Minnesota Equal To inspected and the grocer was not aware that that is actually completely acceptable within the state of Minnesota.
Thank you, Jane. And this is the kind of information that both farmers can be equipped to go to their grocer with, and that we're going to be training the grocers to understand those nuances of those regulations. So our hope is that you farmers will have a cohort. Let's just say we're lucky enough to get like 25 grocers who can take part in this series, 25 grocers who are up to speed and interested in bringing local foods into their grocery store.
Kathy, we have another question about your surveys.
Okay.
How do the tribal nations that neighbor the rural areas fit into these surveys and reports?
So our data would include grocery stores that were associated geographically with Native nations. And we work, for example, with our federally recognized tribal extension program, and we share anecdotes about our grocery stores, which one's good, tribal, on tribal places, or, you know, tribal adjacent stores. So we didn't ask like if you own a grocery store, if you have a tribal affiliation. So I don't know if any of these are tribally owned by tribal members, but this would have covered stores that served tribal populations. I hope that answers the question. Could you repeat the question, Jerry, about how it addressed stores in tribal nations or adjacent or in tribal nations?
Yes. How do tribal nations that neighbor rural areas fit into these surveys? I think you answered it. If not, then I'll ask the person who submitted the question to follow up with me.
Yeah, but we have tribal colleagues. And like I said, we didn't ask anyone to self-identify as being part of a tribal nation, but we know that these stores are serving tribal communities. So just one more thing that we ask grocers, what is the barrier to selling locally grown fresh produce that's purchased from farmers? And they said the number one barrier is a sufficient supply of local produce to sell. So I think that again speaks to this issue of the opportunity for some demand for our locally grown food. And I can just say anecdotally that we were selling shell eggs to the local grocery store in Clinton, and the grocer said to us, you know, we know you want $3.50 for your eggs, and the grocer only agreed to sell our eggs on consignment because she's like, I sell eggs for 99 cents. Your eggs at $3.50. I'm afraid, you know, you're really nice people and everything, but no one's going to buy your eggs. And it turned out that people were actually calling and saying, are there farm fresh eggs on your shelves today? Like it became a draw for the store. And the grocer was really surprised. And we went from having a consignment where I bring in, you know, 15 dozen eggs, and if 15 sold, I got paid for 15. to just, I would bring in 15 dozen and I would get a check for it, because the grocer gained confidence that in fact people were willing to sell, or people were willing to buy farm fresh brown eggs out of her shelf, even though right next to them was the eggs, white eggs for 99 cents a dozen. So just throwing that in. All right, and then looking at what the makeup of what are these grocers currently buying directly from farmers. Fresh vegetables is at the top, followed by honey. Again, I guess I did not realize the extent of honey. Fresh fruit, shell, eggs, syrup, and you can see the meat was pretty low, as well as some processed grains and nuts. And then when we asked what they would like to buy more of, what else would you like to buy? In addition to what you're already buying, what would you like to buy more? And so some of those were like jams and jellies were towards the top of the list. Fruit, vegetables, syrups, meat, eggs, and again, the honey. All right. When we asked these grocers again, what is your barrier to selling locally grown fresh produce, and understanding the rules and regulations was at the top, followed by the supply, followed by maintaining the shelf life. So I highlighted those because I think those are the things that we'll be focusing on. And one of those 3 workshops is all going to be on the regulations, so that grocers and farmers are clear on, okay, what can we do? All right, you don't need to read all that wordy text, but we submitted a postcard so these grocers could tell us what services they would like, because it's one thing for us to get information from them, but we got to be able to also then provide services back to them that meet some of their store needs. And we got a lot of these came back to us, and so we are working with grocers on a number. In fact, how many did we have? So 53 additional stores that sent us back this postcard said that they would like help connecting with local farmers to buy products, fruit, vegetables, meat, cheese. So that's why one of the reasons we're teaming up with SFA, right? So that we can actually, I think what's needed here, and you guys are experts, so you can tell me whether or not you think this is true, but we need to do a little bit of hand holding, like, hey, farmer, let me introduce you to Bonnie of Bonnie's Hometown Grocery. Bonnie would like to buy more local fruit and vegetables, and I know you're producing on your farm, so let's see if we can make something happen here. So grocers want help connecting with local farmers to buy products. Okay. So anyway, I don't know that I'm going to go into all this data, but that of the grocers that sent us back the postcard wanting help with some aspect of their business, 61% wanted to have Minnesota grown branded materials. And we're also helping them with energy upgrades. I mean, we've got a larger rural grocery support system. And then again, the connecting with local farmers to buy more products is what I just want to call out again. And these, I think this is the list of those 58 stores. I'm not going to count right now, but I'm pretty sure the map that Ren created here is where are those stores that said they would like help connecting with local farmers. So if you're farming in that area, we know that we have a pool of grocers who are, that's really kind of, I'll use the term low-hanging fruit. These are grocers who would like to connect with more farmers.
Kathy, speaking of connecting with more farmers, the questions are kind of blowing up now. So
okay,
would you like to take,
you
say,
bet.
3 of them right now?
Yeah.
Okay, one question, it has to do with professional packaging. How many grocers were you running into who require or request professional packaging on products?
Interesting question. I think it depends on the grocer, and that's actually one of the questions that we have in our toolkit, is that you should go in and talk to that individual grocer and see if they want packaging. But what we found when we were testing the with the garlic and the farm to grocery and then farm to grocery and then backhauling that into wholesale is that the wholesaler asked for packaging, the grocer did not. Because the grocer was fine. They had a little basket with garlic and they could just have bulk garlic in their basket. But the wholesaler, for some reason, asked us for to have the garlic packaged. So I think that depending on what your product is, you don't necessarily need packaging. I mean, I think there's some products that we could actually do really good by our communities as well as our farmers. Like if you're having a squash that is like not delicata, something that's a little bit harder, where we have older populations, it would just be so helpful if you could cut that in half and seed it, cellophane it, and it could be displayed that way. Now, I understand, and Jane will be able to give us the details, that has to be cut and seeded in a commercial kitchen, right? Can't do that in your kitchen on your farm.
Well, that's correct. Yeah, it needs to be in a facility that meets current good manufacturing practices, standards. But when you say commercial kitchen, that sometimes sends people down a path that's much more stringent than they would have to go down. So it shouldn't be in your private home kitchen, but you could go into a church kitchen or a VFW kitchen or a township hall, any place that would have, adequate sanitation and surfaces that are smooth, cleanable, durable, and non-porous that you can sanitize. Farmers can do that cutting up and wrapping, and that is considered processing, but processing all by itself is not a trigger to require a license when it's your own product that you grew. As long as you're not adding any off-farm ingredients, no salt, no seasonings, you can do that kind of cutting up as a farmer and sell it.
Thanks, Jane.
All right. Do you want to take some more at this point, Kathy?
Yeah. Yep.
We may be in Q&A for the rest of the session at this point.
Well, I got to show you a little of the toolkit, just as a teaser, so that you sign up for the workshop.
All right. Well, we'll do the next 3 that are queued up, and then let you go back again. So, do you know of any trade shows where for grocers that feature local foods?
Wow, that is a fabulous question. And I know of trade shows, and we've actually been asked to come in and have a booth just because they feel like these grocers need more support. So yes, there are trade shows. We have not had like a booth for local foods, but that's a really good idea. And I can pitch that. We have a wholesaler that's based in Wadena, Minnesota, Mason Brothers. They do a spring show every year where they basically pay the grocers to come and tour, they have like showcase new items. They give them little presentations. It's really, really helpful for those really smallest of small town stores. So I think that's a really good idea. And as soon as we're past this pandemic and we can have a trade show again, I think that's a really good idea.
Oh, I think our SDP just volunteered to present such a trade show, didn't you?
I think as well that Feast Local Foods show in Rochester, they have one for the community, but prior, at least a few years back when I did it, they had the day before the community available one was specifically for restaurants and wholesalers to come in and meet with.
Yeah, so Feast is another good one. And we did actually connect a wholesaler to Feast so that he could come and talk about these issues from the wholesale perspective. So
maybe Jared would find the link for Feast and Renewing the Countryside and put that in the chat for us. There's a general question about how farmers and communities find each other, even for things like farm to school. And of course, we're talking about farm to grocery. Any recommended first steps?
Well, we've got SFA on here. I mean, we can join a chapter. Hopefully folks know each other. I love, I've sold at the farmer's market before. And I mean, I think there's probably is a little bit of community building and community connection that we need to do to connect our farmers. I mean, I know like Big Stone Garlics in Big Stone, I hang out with those folks, and our track coach in Ortonville is an avid, big market gardener. So, I mean, like you kind of get to know the community a little bit. So I think, but SFA is another good source. We got our chapters. We can all join up and have the conversation in our chapter as well.
Thanks for the plug there, Kathy. And we will be glad to help people do those connections. Get in touch with me, Jerry Ford, and you can find our other staff people listed in the staff link on our website. Now, there's an interesting question about food insecurity in rural areas. How does this model help address that? Like, is there any kind of financial support or assistance to help with that affordability of fresh foods in these communities?
So, yeah, and this is my point. This is what I said earlier about why I think Homeland Security and Department of Defense should be funding this work. I think having diverse supply chains that go into grocery stores just builds food resilience and it builds food access. And I'm going to shout out to the Minnesota Department of Health that they have helped these small town stores all become WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, and SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, compliant. Because, and I'll just give you an example, in one small town with a very small population in the low hundreds, right? It was going to cost $10,000 to get the cash registers WIC compliant. And they knew they only had one WIC kid in the community. I mean, how many generations does it take if you've got one kid, who's using that program to pay off a $10,000 investment in upgrading your registers? Department of Health stepped in and helped. So in terms of your let's just use a product, your apples that are in that grocery store could be purchased by someone using SNAP. So I think in that sense, it does make local food more accessible to local people who are using some of the supplemental nutrition programs that we have. So I think this is part of how we can help make local foods more available to food insecure people.
And just a quick follow-up on that one, the elderly with access to local foods, are there any specific programs for affordability?
That's a good question. Not that I'm aware of, although I know that, I think there probably are some opportunities to, for example, connect Meals on Wheels. These grocery stores are selling food that is going into the Meals on Wheels in some of the communities, not everywhere, but I showed you the network that they have. So, I think there's some opportunities that we can get more local foods into some of those programs are for elders. But I'm serious, I mean, my mom has arthritis and can't cut a squash. I mean, if we were able to just do some minimal processing like that of some of these whole foods, I think they become more accessible to some of our senior population as well. So I think there's probably some nuances and some layers, and there's probably some strategies. So if you've got some strategies on how we can help with the elderly population, who honestly are a lot of the people who are shopping at these rural grocery stores, because they are not going to drive 75 miles round trip to go to the super Walmart. So they are the people who are going to Main Street, or honestly, it's the grocer who's after, when the workday is over, is dropping the groceries off at the senior person's house on their way back home after the day of running the grocery store. I mean, I actually literally have seen that. So, so I think, by improving the food quality and increasing the amount of local foods on the shelves of these rural grocers, I think we'll have some opportunity to serve those populations as well.
And I believe that some counties have elder services. I know that my county does, to assist with some affordability things. So we're going to let you get back to your presentation here, because you've got the toolkit to get out there. And when you're ready for more questions, we have the general manager of a large co-op chain who has some astute questions, and then a question about insurance.
Excellent. Okay. So you'll notice we call this the Farm to Grocery Toolkit. I keep talking about rural groceries, but this toolkit would work for any grocery. So you large co-op general manager, this toolkit's for you too, and your colleagues, because we left the word rural out of the title on purpose. So I think Jane would agree with me. Maybe it's easier to get into a small town independent grocery store, but if you have a willing general manager at a large co-op, I think we're good there as well. So this is the table of contents, and this is basically what we'll be working through in that 3-part workshop series, really kind of talking the overview, which you guys are getting today, talking about the legality and the methods, which is what Jane is going to be working with us on, as well as that legal product checklist. You know, just like me and my direct, you know, farm to consumer beef sales, you really need to, you know, what does it mean to build a working business relationship with a grocer? We've got some templates in there that might be for an invoice or for other things that will make these transactions easier. We're going to be talking about what processing you can have, like Jane mentioned earlier about having a type of kitchen that is acceptable for doing a little bit more processing of your raw ingredients. And we have sample product labels and invoices. So these are all the things we tried to make this. It's really a toolkit that should help you. You know, if you're unable to go to the workshop series, you can download the toolkit and you can have it all at your fingertips as well. And this is where it is. It's at z.ufn.edu at farm to grocery. And you can just click, I think you just click on the picture, or you can click on the view download file, and you will have access to that. And again, call out to Ren and Jane and Karen Lanthier, who jumped ship from the RSDPs to go work for Minnesota Grown at MDA, but Karen was on the ground floor of this, building this toolkit as well. So we're really grateful that we had a good team. You know, I think we talked about why you would be interested in this and the benefits to farmers. Number one, those grocers are interested in your food, and it's another diversified market. There are some challenges, of course, like someone asked the question about packaging. Grocers do look for some of your perfect produce. You know, they're used to clicking on Tuesday and having it delivered on Thursday, you know, so we got to set expectations for what that availability means. Of course, we've got seasonality as well. And you'll need to give your grocer a heads up if all of a sudden, you know, a thunderstorm comes through and your lettuce crop was destroyed. You know, the grocers need to know that so they can bob and weave and find another source of food for their customers. We'll be talking about that legality and methods. Again, grateful for Jane's contributions here about food safety. You know, at what point would you need a food handler's license? And then we will be covering a pretty wide range of products, from fresh produce to bakery and dairy. So again, like I said, you know, we have some tools in here with some suggestions for what is needed to build these strong business relationships. You know, and having that conversation with the grocer about how do you want this displayed? Do you want it in a clamshell? You know, are you okay with bulk? Or if I bring in a cute little crate, can we put the crate in your produce cooler, kind of thing? So I think there's lots of opportunities, including different pathways for sales, right? Like I talked to you about how we started selling our eggs on consignment because the grocer was really skeptical that someone would pay 3.5 times as much for farm fresh brown eggs. So, you know, we actually have some different, you know, talk about different options for how you're going to sell your produce. And then we have some kind of fill in the blanks. So you could actually take this into the grocer and it kind of guides you about some of the things you might need to talk about. And you can take some notes here. So we kind of tried to make it so that it was something kind of that you could use as like a notepad and help guide conversations when you walk in the store and they're talking with the grocer. And it covers these various items. What do they want to what do they want to purchase? How do they like to stay in touch? My grocer, and you'll find a lot of these grocers, email's not the thing. They do not have time to do emails. So like our grocer likes to text. So, you know, you'll find out how they like to, you know, stay in touch.
Kathy, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So the toolkit also includes some farm feature template, because I think we all know that part of what's nice about local foods is it connects local people to their local farmers. And so we actually kind of give you some, you know, templates for how you could have, you know, your farm information that could be posted on in the grocery store by your product. And then we do talk about processing for sale, like Jane was saying, what is that definition of processing, and other farm products as well. So just kind of showing you some of the things that we'll actually have in this toolkit, which we really, like I said, we really picture this is just a toolkit for helping farmers and grocers. We really kind of gear it towards both audiences. Whew. Okay, so I have a few minutes for questions if there are any other questions. You're muted, Jerry.
Gosh, and I'm usually the one who has to say, you're muted. We have a bunch of questions and we're not going to get to all of them. I put my contact information in the chat. For those of you that we don't get to, if you would like to contact me directly, I will put you to the people who can answer those questions for you. Happy to do that. Okay, so let's see if we can tackle, I'm going to go ahead and put him on the spot here. I don't think he minds. Dale Woodbeck is the general manager of the Lake Winds Food Co-ops on the west side of the Twin Cities. He has an interesting comment about the survey shows several challenges in rural grocery. The average age of the store owners is approaching retirement age. Grocers don't have succession plans. Rural grocery sales volume decreases 25 to 30% when a dollar type store opens 15 miles away.
Yep.
And then finally, coolers, buildings, and other infrastructure are getting pretty old in some of these stores, and investment is headed out, is needed for those stores. Can you speak to those barriers to long-term success or survival, as it may be? And you've got all of 3 minutes to do that.
Okay, so thank you, Dale, for that very good reading of our survey. And yes, there are a number of barriers. As far as the infrastructure goes, you know, a few years ago, we went to the legislature and said we need a good food access fund so that small town grocery stores, that especially those in food deserts, could access more equipment. And I've been long saying we should put a 2-door produce cooler in all 250 of these stores so that we could at least be selling fresh produce out of these stores. Even did back of the envelope math on that. But the Good Food Access Fund was able to help some of these grocers buy those coolers that are needed. You know, a few years ago, Blue Cross Blue Shield had some funding that they helped support get produce coolers in stores. And I've actually seen community fundraisers to buy a new, you know, 8-door freezer unit for a grocery store. So I think there's, you know, state level, nonprofit level, community level things we can do to keep supporting these stores. They're private businesses, but they do tremendous public good. Having a full service grocery that's serving the whole range of food on your main street is a value. Now, Dale, you're right about the age of grocers, and that there is some pessimism on passing those on and transferring to younger generations. But we still are seeing it happen. We're seeing creative examples. Halstead, Minnesota, their school closed down about 2 years ago. The grocery store, like a number of weeks later, just closed its doors with no notice. And some months ago, the hardware store reopened a new store that is hardware, grocery, liquor, coffee shop. And it's serving all those needs in Halstead, Minnesota. And we're like Fairfax, Minnesota. There's a smokehouse restaurant the grocery store was empty and it was due. All right, we can't say cause and effect. Dollar store came into Fairfax. A few months later, the grocery store closed, right? So we are actually looking at that dollar store issue very carefully. I just did a podcast on it yesterday that'll be put out by the Center for Rural Policy and Development in the coming weeks on dollar stores specifically and the impact on grocery stores. But Fairfax grocery store is open now. It's been open since August 20 because the restaurant bought it, and they have a really interesting, they're a few blocks apart, but they've got an interesting tie between the smokehouse and the grocery store that seems to be working. So we're seeing a creativity and innovation in keeping these and reopening these stores once they close.
Okay, well, thanks, Kathy. We're out of time for you here. If you want, you can put your official contact information in the chat. So
okay,
if you want to get directly in touch with you, that would be wonderful. Thanks so much. I wish we had the ability to pipe in applause sound here. But there we go. We'll let James do that. So I would like to now turn over to James Harren here. We have this program going on with some partners that I'll let James tell you about. He's the project lead for the Local Producer Sustainability Project for South Central and Southwest Minnesota. I have posted in the link chats, rather in the chat links, a link for Southwest, the Minnesota Initiative Foundation webpage that will tell you which 20 counties there are. So if you're not in one of those counties, maybe you know somebody who is. So I'm going to turn it over to you, James. Thanks.
Thank you for the introduction, Jerry. And thank you, Kathy and Jane, for teaching us about how rural groceries can serve as a real great asset in greater Minnesota. So as Jerry said, I'm James Harren. I'm the Local Foods Economic Opportunity Vista at Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation. And I'm here to present the Local Producer Sustainability Project. And so this project is a collaborative effort between Sustainable Farming Association, Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation, and Minnesota Farmers Market Association, and Renewing the Countryside. So these four organizations came together to develop this 3-year project, which aims to assess the barriers to keeping and maintaining a viable food producing business in Smith's region of South Central and Southeastern Minnesota, which is actually, it's from New Ulm to Red Wing, south to the Iowa border. So it's all of that area. And so after they developed this work plan and this idea for the project, they leveraged the support of AmeriCorps, and that is how I'm here today. So our vision, we envision a future with a well-supported local food economy that will foster a diverse agricultural landscape, a lively local marketplace, and a bustling rural communities. We want to create a local environment that supports farmers, entrepreneurs in the food arena, and farmers markets, fostering more viable and sustainable businesses. So it's a 3-year project. And in this first year, well, I'll back up a little bit. So this is actually, the project is in recognition that local foods economy can support communities, can support economic, a lively local economy, and also support environmental sustainability and land stewardship within our region. But to have a local food economy, we need viable and thriving businesses, food producing businesses in the region. So this project is really focused on supporting and understanding the needs and barriers that food producing businesses face. And so in this first year, so we're at the very beginning of the project, and in this first year, I'm planning to talk with as many food producing business people as I can to understand the wide range of struggles that people face in creating and growing their business, so that eventually in year 2 and 3, we will be able to address those concerns through leveraging existing resources within the region and also perhaps creating new support systems. And so I'm focused more on the business side, so the individual business side of things. And then I will have a colleague who's starting next week, actually, we're very excited, who will be focusing more specifically on the viability of farmers markets in our region. So kind of the two halves of the local food economy as we see it. And so how can you all help and collaborate with the project? So right now we're very early on, and I'm just trying to talk with as many people as I can to gain a really big, wide understanding of all of the issues that people may face in building their business. So if you feel that you'd have a story that you'd like to share with me, or want to point out any organizations that might be good to talk to, please feel free to send me an email or give me a call in the little corner there. I'm just trying to gain a better understanding so that when eventually I approach the assessment work with more a more formal format, that I can better ask more targeted questions and get better answers. And then 2, you can connect me to farmers, producers, food producing businesses in the region of focus, or also organizations that support food producing businesses in the region. And then finally, we are building an advisory committee for this project. This advisory committee will help guide the project with their knowledge in local foods, food systems, business management, and economic development. They will help guide the project with their expertise. And then also they will help connect and develop those networks that we're trying to utilize within the region and help resource mapping. So bring their organization in to help support the project or help connect to important institutions in the area. So feel free to send me an email or give me a call, and I look forward to the project progressing more. So that's all I have, Jerry.
Okay.
If there are any questions or comments, or we can talk more about rural grocery as well.
Well, I think we've, well, it looks like Kathy may still be on here. If Kathy, you wanted to take some more questions, I don't know, can somebody, yeah, there she is. I see you're unmuted. And so we're kind of pulling a fast one on our Zoom host, Jared here. First off, James, will you be putting your contact information in the chat?
Yes, I'll do that right now.
Let's do that. I don't think we have any specific questions. We do have, it looks like there is, okay, I hesitate to do this. Kelsey, would you contact Mary in the chat there about people in Pittsburgh? Doing a favor here for Pennsylvania. Okay, so Kathy.
Well, it was super exciting to see the list of all the small town grocery stores that you're shopping through the state. And someone else mentioned in the chats that it's hard to get organic food at your small town grocery store. So I think there's a how-to here. And the how-to is, number 1, ask your grocer, but you also have to make a commitment then to buying that food. So when I asked our grocer to start selling Organic Valley milk, then I also had to make a commitment that I would buy the milk, because otherwise there may not be people in the community who are willing to pay a little bit more for organic milk. So, and I have to tell you that it's a social contract I have with my grocer, that if we're going to go on vacation, because literally my 2 16-year-old boys, I do buy milk by the case, right? And when I go on vacation, I have to tell her so that she can put a halt on buying that milk for our family. So if you aren't finding the products you want at your small town grocery store, you just need to ask, and then you have to step up and be the person who shows up and buys it. You know what? Sometimes like I ask for organic kale. Not a lot of people are going to have that, but I put it on Facebook, you know, like, hey, Bonnie has organic kale. It just came in on the truck today. It's really good. You know, this is your only chance to get it, kind of thing. So we can help out our grocers by kind of, when they do the things that we would like to see in the store, that we kind of go out and help them to sell those things. And I think it'll be the same. It'll be the same with when we have farm fresh produce on those shelves. We need to put out a note on Facebook. Hey, everybody, you can find my apples, my beef, my garlic at, you know, Bill's grocery store in Ortonville or wherever you happen to be at.
Well,
So,
talking about those, you know, swapping out those percentages of what is not local food and converting that over to local food. Dale, again, Woodbeck, was asking about that percentage. What percentage of the food sold in these rural grocery stores might actually be able to be converted from non-local to local?
that is an excellent research question. And I don't know that we know the answer to that right off the top, because as everybody knows, like, for example, meat supply chains right now are difficult for small and medium-sized farmers. So where you might be able to say we could replace 100% of the beef and pork in that case with local beef and pork, we don't have the processing capacity for small and medium-sized farmers. So I think the potential is there, but I think we have other barriers in our supply chain. And in addition, American consumers are part of that barrier, right? Like, you want to have strawberries in, you know, in the winter when there aren't Minnesota grown strawberries. And actually strawberries are a very difficult produce to get into grocery stores and wholesale, because for a number of reasons, food safety, as well as the varieties that we use are not necessarily meant for shelf stability type of thing. But I think the potential is there. But I just think that we don't yet have necessarily the systems in place that would support that.
I think it's a good point, and I think that maybe Dale just volunteered to help you work on those percentages. Okay, we have about 3 minutes here. Questions about insurance. I know my farm has both my insurance on the property and protecting people when they're here, and I also have product insurance for when I sell product off the farm. And I could say who I have that with, but I'm sure that's not the only people. What recommendations can we come up with for talking to people about insurance?
So I don't have that product insurance. Maybe I'm putting my farm at risk not to. I don't know, Jane, if Jane has an answer, but Jerry, it sounds like you're more knowledgeable on that than I would be. I do not have a recommendation for insurance.
Well, if what you're wanting to insure is when your product leaves you and goes out to the grocery store, and then if someone, say, were to drop a watermelon on their foot and break their foot and they want to blame you. Absurd example, but people will sue over anything. Then that is a particular kind of insurance. And I wish I had the policy in front of me so I could tell you exactly what it is. And I did, even though I don't particularly agree with the organization on many things, I did buy that insurance through Farm Bureau, mainly because I had difficulty finding it from anybody else. Now the Minnesota Farmers Market Association has information about selling at farmers markets, and I haven't looked into that to see if it's the same kind of policy. If they want you to have insurance, that it would be that same kind of liability policy. Jane, do you know anything more about that?
I know a little bit. I do have insurance on my farm that allows me to sell product off farm. And again, you know, we're a little bit constrained by recommending specific organizations or specific insurance companies, but there are some out there that do have that kind of coverage. And I think word of mouth and conversations in the hallway when the SFA conference is in person again is a good way to get that kind of information. But The Minnesota Farmers Market Association insurance that is available to vendors does cover product liability and general liability for vendors who are selling at a farmer's market. And it covers general liability and product liability for the markets that have that
Right.
coverage. So,
And it's the kind of thing that you may never need it, and we'll hope you never need it. But boy, if you do, the insurance is really going to save you if you ever did need it. I'll just throw out that SFA has had liability insurance for 30 years. And we've never had a claim with all the events and things that we do. Now somebody will say, well, you're about to. But all right, so we are at our end time here. Again, I have put my email in there for if you still have questions, send it to me and I'll connect you with the people. And I believe Kathy may have put her contact in there.
Yep.
So again, thank you very much. We'll be coming back tomorrow with a couple of different sessions, including tomorrow evening, we have Beth Dooley doing a cooking session with us. And after that, we have the social hour, which is where we just bring in all these musicians that are SFA folks and have a little bit of social time. Thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you at other sessions.